Texas Longhorns are spiraling out of control. Now, is that good for the Bears or bad for the Bears going into Saturday's matchup in Austin? Let's talk through it. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Gametime. I am your host, Cam Stewart. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. It is your team here every day, Baylor Bears, previewing what needs to be a bounce-back game for Baylor, and they aren't the only team in this game that need to bounce back as they travel just about 100 miles south down to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns at the Moody Center Arena, something like that, on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. for that one. And as much as we say, the Bears need to bounce back, that was an awful game on Tuesday, Texas really needs a bounce back. Wednesday night, they dropped to 1-3 in the Big 12. Their only win being a 1-point win against unranked Cincinnati. They dropped to UCF 77-71 in a game where they had at least a 15, I think a 17-point lead at one point, a 12-point lead at halftime. They just completely fell apart in the second half, specifically the last 12 minutes. And UCF comes out with a win. And better yet, Rodney Terry, the Texas head coach, loses it during the handshake line because the UCF players are doing what we would all do given their situation and putting the horns down on Texas's home court after beating them. And he just lost it, man, just yelling at the players saying, that's classless. Don't do that. And in the post game, he was asked about it. And this will just kind of give you what you need to know about where Texas is at right now with their basketball program.
I'm a big believer in, you win the right way, you lose the right way. And, I always tell my guys, whether you win or lose, you win the right way. You lose the right way. You carry yourself the right way. You don't go through the handshake line or prior to getting to the handshake line and have about 6 or 7 guys putting the horns down. We don't do that, because when you do those kind of things, it looks very classless, and it also looks like you were just hoping to win. We never go into games trying to hope to win. We go into games expecting to win. So we don't act like that. We expect to win. We don't jump up and down act like we won a national championship. We sure don't step on anyone's home court deal and act crazy and try to show them up in any way. We don't do that. So that's what I was angry about. And I was letting those guys know you don't do that. You guys won. Hey, we shake your hand, tip our hat to you, but we're not going to let you act that way in our building. You're not going to do that. You're not going to put your horns down and do all that nonsense.
Oh boy. Oh, boy. They really got under Rodney Terry's bonnet there. Oh, man. Look, I like Rodney. I think he did a terrific job last year filling in for Chris Beard, and with all the hurdles that team had, not only with losing their head coach in the middle of the season or right before the conference schedule, but also their best player, Dylan Dessou, getting hurt. And they right at the end of the season, and he still gets them to the Elite Eight. They're literally just a few baskets away from the Final Four for the first time in 20 years. And so I respected the heck out of him. I still do. I thought that was a good move by Texas to promote him because he had been the assistant and the main recruiter under 2 regimes, and they really had kind of continued on playing well from the end of Shaka's days through the Chris Beard era, the short-lived Chris Beard era, and then he takes them to the Elite Eight. So I can't sit here and say, oh, that was a stupid move, huh? Hindsight's 2020. I would have been saying the same thing, at the end of last season, that Rodney Terry should get the job. Jury's still out on whether he's still a good head coach. One person who doesn't believe in the Texas Longhorns is, I have this great column here from the Austin American-Statesman from Kirk Bohls. If you follow anything around the Austin area, Kirk Bohls has been there forever and is one heck of a columnist, even looking past his obvious faults of covering the Texas Longhorns and being a Yankee fan. But just great stuff yesterday talking about this Texas basketball team. And he starts it with this. Here lies the Texas basketball team, born November 6th, died January 17th. Cause of death was unnatural causes. But the symptoms were a gross lack of leadership in crunch time, a bad case of defensive lapses, a clear shortage of toughness, poor fundamentals, and an inability to finish games. Otherwise, the Longhorns were in great health. This is fantastic. And it pretty much just gets better from here on out. I'm just going to highlight some of my favorite parts and the takeaways that you need to know about this team that Kirk talks about. And this is something I will get into in the second segment here. But the Knights badly out-rebounded the Horns by 15, and their bench outscored the home team's reserves 34-7, plus 27 on the bench. And he puts in a quote here from Dylan Dessou, who said after the game, "I don't think anything is wrong with us. We just got to figure out how to play hard for 40 minutes. And I find that interesting because I think Baylor fans looking at the Big 12 schedule and how the 4 games that they've played, even though they're 3-1, would say, we're still waiting for a complete 40-minute performance from this team. And yet they're 3-1. Texas is 1-3. And this is what's amazing. I double checked with ESPN on their website to look at this, and this is true. Texas isn't listed on anyone's current 68-team NCAA tournament field or even one of the last 8 teams out by ESPN's projections, and that was before they lost to UCF, which ESPN picked to finish last in the conference, by the way. Before they lost to UCF, they weren't in the tournament. I had Drake Toll on, host of Locked On Big 12, talk about this on ESPN 1660. It was about a week and a half ago now, and he was ahead of the curve. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas does not make the tournament at all. And based off that and what we've seen, they are not a tournament team. Like, they are sinking like a stone. And he talks about how, Rodney Terry kind of kept this team together last year, and even with Dessou out, they make a run to the Elite Eight. And then he says, but this team with Dessou looks rudderless and disconnected at times, and a bit fragile mentally. I don't know how you see that game on Wednesday and think that they're not a bit fragile mentally. They completely blew it. Now, I know UCF isn't the last place team that a lot of experts projected. They beat Kansas. They only narrowly lost to BYU. Like, this is a solid team. But they've made the tournament once in the last 20 years. Like, I think Johnny Dawkins is doing a good job there, but it's not like, this is this sleeping giant of a team. And so Kirk Bohls kind of takes them over the coals there. And he's right. This team is just, if it's not directionless, it's heading in the wrong direction. They just can't seem to get things right. They lost embarrassingly in their last game out before UCF at West Virginia. If you didn't pick UCF to be last, you picked West Virginia. And I've said this a few times on this show, but if a team could opt out of a season or opt out of a conference for a season, the Mountaineers absolutely would have done that. With the firing of Bob Huggins late in the spring, early in the summer, I don't remember when that was, just trying to throw a team together, just try one step away from the open tryouts that TCU women are hosting this week, like to just fill out a roster. And they're as hapless as they come in this conference. I feel for them. It's hopefully just this year that they're this hapless, but they beat Texas. Now UCF has too. And I would love to just keep laughing at the Longhorns. You guys know I love doing that. But I think I'm going to have to wait until after tomorrow's game, because I've seen Baylor go against teams that were desperate for wins this year, and it hasn't gone well for the Bears. But this kind of needs to be a W.